Hi everyone, welcome back to CV Live Sisterhood in Surgery. Today's topic is generations of women surgeons looking from past to future. Remember, this is a live event, so you can text in your questions by joining the web. Go to pollev.com, enter DEBAKEY, and send us your questions, or by text DEBAKEY to 37607, and we will be asking these questions live during the show. Welcome back, my co-host, Palma Shaw, and today our very special guests are Dr. Patricia Newman, Dr. Leslie Coleman, Dr. Ourania Preventza. Welcome back. This is a very special show today, and we have the honor of hosting these three outstanding women I just mentioned. All deserve introduction to give a brief overview of their many unmatched accomplishments. Dr. Ourania Preventza today, who will also provide insight as to the surgical impact that these esteemed women have made from a cardiothoracic perspective. And we actually have 5 generations of female surgeons represented. And each has had their challenges and has overcome many obstacles. Our intent is to honor them and introduce them to the growing number of women in surgery. They are the trailblazers who created a path for so many of us. They have paid it forward. So we hope that they can give us perspective as to where we came from and where we will end up in 2021.
Thank you, Linda. I have the honor of Patricia Newman, who I met in 1995 when I was a resident at SUNY Upstate Medical Center, rotating through there. And she completed her training at the State University of New York Upstate Medical Center in Syracuse, New York in 1970, when very few women became surgeons. She joined the faculty at her alma mater, where she remained her entire academic career, retiring in 2007 as the Lloyd Rogers Professor of Surgery. And although a general surgeon, Dr. Newman built a specialized practice in breast and endocrine surgery. In 1986, she established the region's first comprehensive breast care center, now named in her honor. Her dedication to women with breast cancer resulted in the Carol M. Baldwin $1 million donation to establish Breast Cancer Research Foundation. Her endocrine surgical expertise led her to be elected as the Vice President of the American Association of Endocrine Surgeons in 1992. Dr. Newman had a strong interest in surgical education when that was not at that time considered to be an academic activity. As a founding member of the Association for Surgical Education, she became president in 1985. She participated in numerous educational programs of the American College of Surgeons, including CSAP. She created and directs the American College of Surgeons Fundamentals of the Surgery Curriculum Project. In 1994, she was named a SUNY Distinguished Teaching Professor. She has been a staunch supporter of gender equity, and in 1981, her call for a meeting with other women surgeons resulted in the founding of the Association of Women Surgeons. Now, nearly 40 years old, the organization has chapters and members throughout the world. The realization that gender equity is essential to assuring the world an adequate surgical workforce, particularly in low and middle income countries, has led to further support of women globally, in particular Women in Surgery Africa. Her outstanding contributions to gender equity, surgical education, and breast and endocrine surgery resulted in her receiving the International Society of Surgeons Prize in 2011 and the American College of Surgeons Lifetime Achievement Award in 2019. Dr. Newman has served as a mentor and sponsor of innumerable people throughout her surgical career. She has been the first woman in numerous positions, most notably the American Medical Association's Council on Scientific Affairs, the American Board of Surgery's chair, and the Association for Surgical Education's president. Thank you, Pat, for being here today. Ourania?
Thank you, Palma. It's really an honor to introduce Dr. Leslie Coleman. Dr. Coleman is the professor of surgery at SUNY Upstate Medical University and chief wellness officer. Dr. Coleman completed her residency in general surgery at Robert Packer Hospital, Garfield Clinic in Pennsylvania, followed by a residency in thoracic surgery at SUNY Health Science Center in Syracuse, New York. She most recently took on the role of as Chief Wellness Officer at SUNY Upstate, New York. However, her many other activities include clinical research, leadership roles in the Department of Surgery, numerous publications and presentations, and a long list of international, national, regional, and local presentations. Dr. Coleman, she was the first woman on the thoracic surgery on the residency review committee for 6 years. And in addition, she's really the founder of the Women in Thoracic Surgery organization. And on behalf of all the women in cardiothoracic surgery, we thank you a lot for that. She's also received the Nina Stan Brownwald Award in recognition from the Association of Women Surgeons, in recognition of outstanding contribution to the advancement of women in surgery in October 1997. And she also received the National St. George Award in 2015 from the American Cancer Society. Dr. Kohman was named the SUNY Distinguished Service Professor in 2004, and she received multiple regional and local awards. Dr. Kohman is really a great honor, and I'm really humbled to introduce you and really thank you so much on behalf of all the women in cardiothoracic surgery.
Pat and Leslie, Rania, Linda, and I thank you again on behalf of all women surgeons for all of these sacrifices that you've made and the strength that you've demonstrated to us, which has inspired us to grow and mature into the academic surgeons that we are today. We hope to cover key topics such as surgical education, wellness, and leadership and advancement, which are key important topics pertinent to all women today. The world is changing rapidly. There's more women in medical school and more female surgeons. We've looked to you for guidance in the past, and we hope you can guide us for the future. Regarding surgical education, how do you, Pat or Leslie, see this evolving with respect to the medical students and trainees from 2021 going forward? Are there going to be unique roles for senior women surgeons as well that can impact the training? Pat, would you like to lead off?
Yeah, I think that the increasing numbers of women in medical school have made it less of an oddity for a woman to be a physician, and therefore taken some of the pressure off defending yourself as being unique and sort of an oddity, which I think is very good. But the thing that really bothers me terribly is that there is still the stigma of women becoming surgeons. And if you question the women medical students, they essentially all are told that it's not a very good choice, that it's a very hard lifestyle, that you will limit yourself in your life in general to pursue this career. And it's being told to them by women on the faculty as well as men, by their families, and by a variety of other people. And I really think that that's something that I have struggled to fight against, and to make sure that women are supported in that choice and to dispel that. And I think that is a very important role for senior women on the faculty, but it's also a very, very important role for mid-career women and incoming women, because it's changed. When I became a surgeon, there were no women surgeons, and the few women who did become surgeons were single and childless and frequently very masculine, and some of them even paraded as men to be considered for the field. So I think there still is more to be done, and it's very important that we serve as good role models by showing them that we have really a good life and a good career and are happy people, and by showing them that they can have anything that they want in life. It's really a matter of being their choice rather than being a limitation because they're becoming surgeons. And it's even worse in other countries. In many of the Asian countries and Africa, up to 75% of the medical students are women, and yet very, very few women select surgery. And that is going to be a real workforce issue for those countries unless they figure it out and recruit more women. So we've started this program, Women in Surgery Africa, to help do that, at least in Eastern, Southern, and Central Africa.
Pat, that's so funny that you say that about Asian countries, because my family, they're pretty traditional. My dad's a family physician, and so again, like the Asian stereotype, you either become a doctor or a pharmacist or you're a complete failure. But when I went into surgery, my mom said, "Why are you doing this to me?" And then when I said I want to do vascular surgery fellowship, she said, "You don't want a husband and kids? No man is going to want to marry you because you're going to be smarter than them and more successful, and they're going to be intimidated." So, even you're absolutely right on that. The traditional Asian family, it's looked upon as, well, that means that you're going to delay your family and having kids and all that.
And even when they become surgeons, I'm good friends with the dean in Pakistan, and actually the women who finish surgical training in Pakistan don't practice. 80% of them don't practice. Oh. And I prodding him to find out why, because that's really terrible. It's worse, I think, to train someone and have them not work almost.
Right, yeah.
Is to not train them in the first place. Let them be family doctors and practice rather than be surgeons and not work,
So what was the reason?
They think a lot of it has to do with the cultural roles of women, and that it still is not acceptable, that the women still bear, the household responsibilities, the family, on and on. And so they believe that has a lot to do with it. But I don't know. And until you study those things and really look into it, you don't know. I'm a great believer in evidence for statements that we make, because when I went, we were told that women weren't strong enough, women wouldn't practice. I mean, all these crazy things. Women who were surgeons couldn't have children. What do the two have to do with one another? I mean, just so much stupidity. Right. And until you really look at it, you don't know.
I think this is one of the examples that are strewn throughout women surgeons, women in cardiothoracic surgery, leadership of all kinds, is that they are thrust into roles or encouraged or not discouraged anyway, for instance, to become a surgeon, but no one is there with them, guiding them to their next step. And I read today about a woman in cardiac surgery that I knew a long time ago, and many years later she settled a sexual discrimination lawsuit, which basically ended her clinical career. And one of the critiques of her was that she was thrust into a leadership role immediately after training without the right mentorship or guidance. Well, that's the fault of the leadership at the place. And this happens to men too, but it also happens to women more under the magnifying glass of everybody needs to have somebody with them along the way to encourage them, to help them forward, to say, what are you doing next? How can I help you get there? Here's what you need to do. Think about this other alternative where you might be more successful, because sink or swim is not the way to grow as a surgeon leader. It's, doggy paddle, here's your life ring, until you're eventually ready to strike out across the lake on your own. And I don't think we do that very well.
No, I think I completely agree with you, Leslie. You mentor people, and the whole idea is that you want for them to be successful. You want for them to fly. You don't want for them to sink. And there is multiple ways of senior people when they mentor and sponsor others, especially juniors, to really ensure that these people are going to fly and be successful.
Right, and women and men need it, but women are starting from lower down on the step because of internal insecurities that have kind of been subliminally given to them over time. So a little more help is more helpful for women.
Absolutely.
And
I also think that some of the diversity initiative can actually be detrimental and counterproductive, in that people want a woman, they want a Black, they want an Asian American, whatever it is. And they look for somebody, whether they're qualified for the job, whether they want the job or interested in it, and they sort of put them in that position. And a lot of times people feel pressure to take those positions, even if it's not something that they're interested in or that they want. And I think we have to guard against that. And so Olga Jonason, who was the first woman of note general surgeon, who's actually almost 10 years older than I am, and she died a while ago. But she was sort of the token woman of my era. And then she did do a variety of things, want to do a variety of things. So I became a token woman. And there were places that I went and things that I kind of felt I had to do that really didn't interest me much at all. And I got to tell you, that was not a good thing. It was not really smart. And frankly, she was not the least bit supportive of me. And she really wasn't supportive of women at all until she became chairman at Ohio State, the first woman chair of a surgery department. And she was treated so abysmally that she finally got it, that your talent, your anything, it didn't matter. There were people who were so blinded by prejudice that they would not treat you well. And so she and Kathy Anderson and I used to meet and every year at the American Surgical Association, and we would come up with what we called the list of worthy women and the list of enlightened men. And the worthy were women who deserve promotion and whatever, and we would talk to them and whatever and see if they were interested in membership or other leadership jobs. And then we would identify worthy men who would support them. And men like to be called enlightened, and it worked out very well. And I still use that, and I tell women who are organizing groups that it's a great way to get men on board, because you really need the supportive men as well as the worthy women. So I think those are two basic principles of advancing women into leadership roles, because the enlightened men will help them. They'll be supportive. They'll kind of teach them the road to success and stand up for them. And if it hadn't been for some of those enlightened men, I would have been annihilated by the second chair of our department, who hated me and would fire me at least once a month.
Oh, that's great. Leslie, I had a question for you. I mean, you founded Women in Thoracic Surgery, and I have to say that I was not there during your first meeting when you have the table and you have few women around. But I was able to be in the other, Women in Thoracic Surgery meetings later on. And do you mind to just tell us a little bit how you started, how you did it, when you did it when nobody else have done it before?
Well, I had a fabulous role model in Pat Newman right there in my own shop, right down the hall. So I had noticed what she'd done to get started with the Association of Women Surgeons, which is nothing but just having breakfast with whoever you can identify. And when I first joined the faculty in 1985, and I did cardiac surgery for the first few years, and as I traveled around, people would always say, well, how many women are doing cardiac surgery? And I didn't know the answer, so I set out to find out. So I looked around everywhere, and I wrote to every program director around the country and asked if they had any women faculty or any women in their residency, and discovered a few. And when there was an AMWA meeting out in Seattle, I looked up Margaret Allen, who was the first woman to do open heart surgery, and had lunch with her. And then I did the same thing. I said, let's have breakfast at one of our meetings. We have two big national meetings, STS and AATS, each year. Let's have breakfast or lunch. And we did that for a few years. And then more people began to join. And eventually we set up more of a formal meeting at these meetings. And the meetings still occur in conjunction with those meetings, but they've grown a lot. We got some corporate sponsorship early on for a newsletter and to buy food and things like that. And then a few years ago, the male leadership of the two societies really began to take notice. And this organization now has hundreds of members of women around the world. And the 30th anniversary was 5 years ago.
Yeah.
And we really have grown. We put on a program. There was a huge he for she moment, and all the male and female medical students that come to the national meetings attend our meeting, and all the leadership of the societies, which are still mostly men, unfortunately, still do come, and it's really grown. So it started really modeled exactly on the Association of Women Surgeons, on what Pat did just a few years afterwards. And of course, the pool is much, much smaller than the pool of general surgeons or women in surgery on the whole in all the specialties. But you know, we're growing all the time, and it really helps people in many, many ways. And I'm so proud that the leadership is all younger women now, and it's totally launched, and I just can sit back and enjoy the success that it has. And I'll just tell you one anecdote similar to Olga Jonassen. Pat McCormick was a general thoracic surgeon at Memorial Sloan Kettering. She had been a nun before she became a surgeon. And I asked her, oh, would you like to join Women in Thoracic Surgery? And she said, well, no, I don't think I would want to join any society that was based on a characteristic like sex or gender. I would like it on the basis of a professional aspect. So I said, okay. Well, some years later, she ended up an officer in our society after she became enlightened, like we talk about. So, you know, it's just a pathway. But the younger women, they're enlightened from day one now. So they really want to reach out and join. And we have all these scholarship programs so the young women can, the students and general surgery residents can attend the meetings and have a lot of role models. And so that's one of the reasons we've been very successful, is getting these very young women there, and then they join as they go forward.
I think just for the audience to know, and I think we know that, I mean, it's obvious that things, of course, don't happen by serendipity. I mean, you're a very successful, you know, surgeon. You started Women in Thoracic Surgery. You focused on esophageal and lung disease. And what we have seen throughout the years is that there is more women follow like the pathway of thoracic surgery instead of the pathway of cardiac surgery per se. And to me, it's like obvious that, you know, there are women like you, Valerie Rush, you know, very, very, really great role models, Calvin and Reed, that they really paved the pathway for the thoracic domain, while on the cardiac domain, we never really had women achieve high positions in a way to work as role models. Why do you think that this is happening?
Well, I think that, I don't know really what the statistics are. I think that in part role models is important. I also think probably that the men who do cardiac surgery are a little bit different than the men who do general thoracic surgery. And this is all old lore that isn't relevant anymore, and it should be stamped out. But the Lone Ranger, the I can take anything model has been the aura of cardiac surgeons, because this was the frontier and going forward into the great future unknown and taking risks and so forth. So I think that there was a little bit more encouragement, and the care of general thoracic patients is often the care of people with cancer. And it's very rewarding in ways that are not necessarily typically thought of as the rewards that go for people who do open heart surgery. I had a cardiac surgeon once when I was a general surgery resident after an operation say, come with me, I'm going to teach you how to talk to a family once so you never have to talk to them again.
Oh, wow.
Well,
that's good
not
point.
a good example.
Yeah, that's a good point.
And you don't do that with these cancer patients. You take care of them for years and years, and you get to know their family, and it's very rewarding, but in a different way than achieving some technical miracle of replacing miles of, you know,
hopefully
coronary arteries and valves and things, and doing a technical.
we were going to change the paradigm. Pat, I have a question for you. I mean, you have achieved like senior positions and presidencies in various societies, and there is a say that it's really sometimes lonely at the top. I would like to ask you, do you think that how important would have been for you to have other women in senior positions during your tenure as a president in these various societies, and how this you think would have helped you along the way?
Well, it didn't matter to me, obviously. I'll be 80 years old in 3 months. And when I became a surgeon, there were no women there, but there were, as I will still call them, enlightened men who were interested in helping me and being friends. And, you know, some of them have been lifelong, really wonderful friends to me. And so I don't think that it really is that important in many ways, as long as you have people who support you. And you definitely need people support you, and they need to support you in a positive way, you know, when you have problems as well as when you're doing very, very well. So I think that's really it. And I think that actually some of the women who have done themselves in have been women who are male bashers. That just doesn't get anybody anywhere.
No.
Yes, you're absolutely.
And it really reflects more on you than it does on them. So I think that it may have been nice. The only sort of senior woman that I had in my life was actually an internist who was sort of like the matriarch of our medical school forever. And we were good friends. We would have dinner together regularly and do a variety of things. And so you could have somebody to sort of complain about this and that with, but very, very different roles in life and very different practices. So she was more a friend, supporter. But the people who helped me in my professional career were all men. The chairman, when I joined the faculty, was a cardiac surgeon who I wouldn't say was the most enlightened of men as far as social things go, et cetera, but he was very supportive of me, and he actually encouraged me to go to meetings and to get to be known. The endocrinologists that I worked with were wonderful. They taught me how to do research. They helped me get grants. They were all men. And so, you know, I don't think that it mattered that much, but I think it mattered a lot that I didn't have a chip on my shoulder, that I didn't view them as opposition or anything like that, that I actually welcomed the help of enlightened men and men who would be supportive.
That's so
Right.
true.
I think, I was going to say, Pat was a great role model in that sense, in that she just didn't fuss about being a woman at all out in public and so forth, but yet on the backside, she was providing an enormous amount of pulling and mentoring and pushing to the younger women coming below. So although she realized how important this is, she was able to outwardly just go on as she described. So it's a really example of a good balance.
Yeah, it's funny because that's actually one of the things that I was a woman when I was interviewing for a cardiothoracic surgery residency. She turned to me and said, don't worry, even if they see you as a scared, you have to focus and just stay focused. And that's the only thing that you can do. And I think when I speak to young trainees now, really regardless of female or a male, it's really just focus, see your dreams and just follow. And just really do whatever you think is the best thing to do, and try to be a truth into whatever you decide to do in your career. And it doesn't really matter if you're a man or a woman. Just focus and follow your dreams. One more question that I have for both of you: how do you think we can help senior women today to get to leadership positions?
Nominate them. I think that women do not take advantage of their ability to nominate people for everything. It's one of the things that AWS does extremely well. We nominate for every position of leadership in any place that we have any ability to do so. I will promise you that in the American College of Surgeons, we have nominated somebody for the president, every vice president, the board of regents, the lifetime achievement. We have nominated women for all of those positions. We always nominate within the different organizations that we have influence in. And you have to do that. And the other thing is, women who want those positions have to let it be known. You don't want to just sit there and think, well, somebody's going to notice me and all of a sudden ask me to be, grand poobah. They're not gonna.
Very good point.
You've got to let it be known. And when I go as visiting professor, I talk particularly to the women about letting it be known. And also, if they want to have children, they should have children, and they shouldn't give a damn whether it's going to be inconvenient for anybody at their institution. That is their right as a human being, and to go for it if they want it. And you just have to kind of let people know who you are and what you want. And, I'm sure you've all heard Julie Freischlag's story about her child. And so you do, and you can enlist the support of your colleagues frequently. Mm-hmm. So, and men will nominate you. And I can't tell you how many men ask me to nominate them for things.
I just have to jump in when you say that, because Rod White just texted me, and he trained at SUNY Upstate. He must be watching.
Yes.
So he just texted me that you were a role model for him. So you were not only
wonderful.
You're like an amazing role model, not just for every woman, but even these incredibly successful men. And you've been so well, and you haven't biased in one way or the other. You just treated everybody very fairly and helped everyone.
Well, I think that's important. I remember Rod very, very well, a very, very nice, accomplished young man. And there's so many of the men who've gone through medical school who keep in touch with me still, et cetera, and even nationally. And I think that quietly, male surgeons really like women surgeons. They just don't like it to be that well known. And they confide in you and they become your friends. I probably know more about the lives of more accomplished male surgeons almost than I do women, or at least as much, because they talk to you. They sometimes even ask you advice about their family or life. And I can't tell you how many of them have contacted me about retirement. They said they don't know anybody who's retired as happily as I have. And I think all those things are important. It's really, really hard to stop doing surgery. One of the hardest things you'll ever do in your life.
I agree. I was on maternity leave and for 4 months because my baby was in the NICU. But even despite all the turmoil and her being sick, I was like, man, I miss operating. I mean, I could just maybe I could go in and just do a quick fistula, or if there's a rupture, maybe they could call me and I could go over and help. But I definitely know what you mean. And you both of y'all seem extremely happy. I mean, you can just see it from the way you're talking. And since we're on that topic, this is a question about wellness. Since Leslie, you are the Chief Wellness Officer, in the past, this topic has not been such a concern in medicine, especially in the world of cardiothoracic surgery. Traditional training had a reputation for long hours, no sleep, malignant attendings that would throw things at you and kick you out of the OR. And so why in your career when did you first express interest in this topic, and what obstacles do you see in the CT world in promoting wellness as a vital and essential component of training and throughout a person's career?
Well, a few years ago, I became president of an officer in our medical staff, and then later president, and I really realized how distressed so many of the doctors were, surgeons, non-surgeons, that didn't really matter. And then I began to read a little bit and realized the burnout and the suicide rate among doctors, in particular women, and this is really bad. And I look at it from a slightly different lens. There are really two components to wellness, or actually well-being in the medical world. And one is personal resilience. And that's what people have to cultivate themselves. And the very simplest things of getting enough sleep. Maybe one of the reasons those old grumpy people acting unprofessional and throwing things didn't get enough sleep, because it's absolutely key. And staying up all night being a hero is not really even good for your patients. It creates lower quality care, and we all know that now. Unprofessional actions are not tolerated the way they were before. They still are tolerated a little bit in some places, or maybe a little bit too long sometimes, but that whole atmosphere has changed dramatically, and people get thrown out of medical staffs and fired for lots of things that I saw a lot of and Pat saw even more of. And you guys have seen maybe a little bit, not nearly as much of as we did back then. So the sleep, proper nutrition, exercise, and I think medical students and residents get a lot of this right now, and they do pay attention to these things. And it's become more possible with the 80-hour work week and so forth. The other component is the structural ability, and this is a supportive environment around you that gives you what you need so that you're working to the top of your license. You have the right whole core of team members, nurse practitioners and office assistants and nurses and scribes and registrars and whoever you need to make your life good. And a survey we've done just very, very recently here in Syracuse showed that people are suffering from a chaotic work environment and poor team function and feeling lack of support and feeling unaligned with the values of their leaders. This is bad, and this is core to well-being, is to be working where you feel that you are aligned with the value system of your leadership and that they are giving you what you need to be successful. The AMA has this program called the Joy in Medicine Award. We want everybody to get up in the morning and most of the days to say, hey, I'm really glad I'm going to work and working as a doctor today. And that's ideal, but it's not, you can't do it just by getting enough sleep and doing more yoga and meditating. You have to have a structure around you that provides you with what you need to be successful. So that's a really big goal, and I'll be working away towards it in these last years of my working life. I decided a pandemic was not a good time to retire. So took this on to see if I could do a little bit.
You know, Leslie, it's interesting that you say that the values don't align, because all of the studies that have looked at dropouts of women in mid-career have shown that their major reason is because their values don't align with the leadership that they're working for, and that they're just tired of it. And so they decide to quit rather than to try to move up in the hierarchy. And I think as women become leaders, they have to think about that. Some of the early women chairs have not exactly been sweethearts and have really perpetuated the male stereotype of imperialism and dictatorship and disregard for people's lives. And so I think that the women leaders need to really be vocal about this and support it. I was chair of the board when the 80-hour work week went into, and I finally stood up in front of the group and I said, listen, you have just got to figure out how to make this work in your institution and stop complaining about it, because you're looking like idiots. I said, for the average person in the world, an 80-hour work week is twice as long as it should be.
Right.
So to say that it's too short, you really just look dumb. And we're never going to, it was the year we had the lowest match in surgery for like ever. And I said, no wonder. I said, all you do is complain that people don't want to be slave labor 1,000 hours a week. You know?
Right.
What did they say to you when you said that in the meeting?
They just sort of looked, and you know what? They changed their tune. I didn't hear it again, actually, at that meeting or any other meeting. And there started to be discussions about well, maybe we don't have to do that, and maybe we don't require this. And well, we could shift it so that maybe the people on trauma do a different work week. So they started to have more positive conversations. And I said, if you tell people repeatedly how miserable you are because they are not working, I said, and quite honestly, you say you're working 120 hours a week, see the time slips, a lot of you aggrandize it. And it was one thing that was proven, that men tend to overestimate their work week and women tend to underestimate it because of a variety of things. So you need to speak out, and you need to speak out even if it's unpopular. And I must say that several of them came up to me and they said, how did you dare say that? I said, listen, I've always dared to say what I thought was the truth.
And it's not only women who want these things, and Pat will remember this. We used to have surgical grand rounds on Saturday morning everywhere I ever was, forever and ever. And I don't know who among you comes back from that era, but Pat remembers it. Surgical grand round was Saturday morning. That's the only time it could possibly be. And finally, one of our men said, I want to watch my kids play soccer. Get rid of Saturday morning. And the chair said, over my dead body, and then we did it. And
yes, because actually we had a discussion about that, and I said, I don't think that that's going to be a popular position, over your dead body, and it may literally be true. Why don't you take a vote of the faculty and see how many people you have in support of you? There was exactly one other person in support of him.
Right. So people, I don't know why people haven't spoken up, men and women and so forth, but it's just human, and we've got to take care of our workforce. Surgeons, thoracic surgeons, doctors, men, women, doctors, everybody. We've got to take care of them. We're an extremely valuable resource. There's been an enormous investment in getting us to where we are. Replacing us costs $1 million at least just to change jobs for an organization. And this is the most valuable employee and the most valuable resource that any practice or hospital or medical center has. And there are a lot of people who are not in medicine that are working in these places that don't really recognize. You can have a hospital without any administrators, but you can't have a hospital without any doctors.
You said that so well. I was actually about to say that, but I didn't want to get fired because I am in the Methodist studio. No, I kid. I mean, they treat us like, this hospital has really treated us well during the COVID times. I think we're the only hospital in the med center that has not gotten a pay cut. So that says a lot. But I mean, in general, hospital administration, just talking national, I mean, they're taught that we are replaceable. Yeah, right? Like that anybody can be replaced. And that's really a shame, because you're absolutely right. We really can't. And there's only a finite amount of us.
Too many doctors accept some of this, and that's part of the problem, and are kind of afraid to speak up. The same thing is true about, the Board of Surgery used to always meet on Father's Day weekend. And I said, no. I said, even though I don't have any children, I said, it's wrong. I said, children should have their fathers at home. Why do you think so many children hate their surgeon fathers? They're not there. So that moved, and I can't tell you how many of the men thanked me for that.
I think one of our meetings was during the Mother's Day, around the Mother's Day. And they haven't done this again. I think this happened, at least to my knowledge, like once, and then they didn't repeat it.
But you do have to stand up for those things and right things. An organization that I just joined wants to have meetings on Friday nights. I said, you're going to do it without me. And I said, and you realize that you're violating a significant portion of surgeons' religious beliefs by doing that. And it was like, oh my gosh, we didn't think about that.
Duh.
Well, most other in the corporate world, they do not meet after hour. They don't have meetings at like 8 o'clock at night or 7 o'clock at night or 6 in the morning. I mean, so if you look at us like any other job, which we aren't, but if you look at it, as if you're a business person or a lawyer, they don't work on the weekends and they don't work after hours. And so that it should be the same for us if we want any sort of quality of life.
Yeah, and I think that, frankly, having lived through medicine being mostly male-dominated to now a more well-distributed gender profession, that it is so dramatically better that you can't even imagine how much better it is. As Leslie said, you forget these things like grand rounds on Saturday morning and, the 8 o'clock meetings and all of this nonsense at 8 o'clock at night, and 6 o'clock in the morning. And it just is inhuman.
I just had another question. I'd love to hear your thoughts. I know Leslie mentioned resilience, and I really think that that's really the key to so many things. You can become a surgeon, you can become an attorney, you can become a CEO of a hospital. All the successful people didn't get there without a lot of hard work, but also they didn't succeed at everything, and often we fail. But I think the one thing that keeps us going is resilience. And I wondered if each of you could comment about maybe when you were in a situation where really you felt like you fell down. You were like, how did I get down to this point? What helped bring you back up? What helped, just for the young female surgeons out there, where did you find the strength to get back up and keep going forward at that time?
I think it starts actually in childhood. I was always allowed to make my own choices as a child. And my father, until he died, would say, I hope you live through figuring it out for yourself, because sometimes my choices weren't wise. But if they weren't wise, I suffered from that. And there were there were expectations. I was expected when I joined the academic faculty to have a basic research career. And I know Leslie can relate to that. And I hated it. I absolutely hated killing rats. And I was allergic to them, and it was awful. And so I finally gave my peer-reviewed research money back to the VA and said I was closing my lab, goodbye. And everybody that I knew in academic surgery told me I had just ended my career. But I was interested in surgical education, and I had learned a lot about surgical education, and I had been associate dean at our medical school and stuff like that. So I said, if an institution of education would not tolerate education as an academic activity, I guess I didn't belong. And then that was sort of the beginning of the Association for Surgical Education. And now surgical education is a very viable academic career. So I think you just have to go with doing what you love and being willing to take the risk of not having a job or being fired or whatever to do what you love to do. And I don't know if that's resilience, if it's stupidity, if it's bullheadedness, but I think you really do. I've had at least 7 careers in my life, and I know Leslie well enough to know she's had equally as many. And you do things that seem at the time the right thing for you and the right thing for the organization, and then they're not, one way or another. And you figure out what is right for you and right for the organization. Or sometimes it's serendipity. You get asked to do things. When I was asked to be associate dean, I thought, this is bizarre. I've no interest in this. I'd never, even in any way, but the dean was an ENT surgeon who had liked me a lot as a resident and who had tried to recruit me to be an ENT resident instead of surgical resident. And so he knew that I was a good worker, utility worker. And I think that's what he wanted. And, it really it changed in many ways the direction of my life. I did true general surgery for a long time. And the chairman who came wanted to do exactly what I did. And so I decided, I'm willing to give up this, but I'm not willing to give up that. And so I hung on to what I wanted and gave up the things that really were not as easily dealt with in my life. So I think that you know, that you just, and I often think about, I have no idea where I got the ability to do that, other than I think I got it from being allowed to make choices as a child and see how they worked out, and figuring out how to change if what I did didn't work out.
Yeah, I think it's the same, and I think people's personality has a lot to do with it. And you read a lot now about practicing gratitude and optimism, and just thinking how lucky we really are. When the medical students used to say, "Oh, I don't know how I'm going to manage a family and taking care of kids and all that," and I said, "Stop, listen, look, you're highly educated, you're never going to be unemployed, you're going to be able to afford to hire people to do whatever you don't want to do, like childcare and house cleaning. And the people that are suffering are not you as a medical student and a doctor. It's a single mother with an abusive ex-boyfriend and 3 kids who's working in the cashier line at Wegmans, or nowadays not working at all. And you'll never be there. You'll never be unemployed. You'll never be poor. And so just, you know, you're go about your charmed life." And I think people absorb that more or less, but it is important to have somebody support you. So it's important to support others. And one time there was a surgeon, it was a woman, but it didn't have to be, who had a very bad patient outcome. And I called her up a day or 2 later and said, "Are you okay?" And she said, "Oh my God, nobody has ever said that to me in all these years. When I had a patient die, nobody has ever checked on me before. This is the second victim, and we've got to support everybody, whether it's a bad patient outcome or a failed, you know, you don't get your paper accepted, your grant gets rejected, you don't win a prize, whatever the heck it is. You need somebody to just, you know, be there with you, and also eventually to remind you, just look at all the patients' lives you have saved and all the successes you have had. And at some point you'll be able to step back and get it more in perspective. But those are the things that make us have a wealth of experience, and why, as you get, in general, people who are older are happier because they realize they can still make it after lots of things have happened.
I always thought it was also important to have people outside of medicine as friends.
Yes.
Because they really put you in a different sense of reality. When I would think that sometimes, oh, woe is me, I'd look at some of my friends who were living on a very low income, again, as Leslie said, had, you know, sometimes an abusive relationship or a challenging relationship, or had lost their jobs, or, you know, something had happened bad in their family. And they give you they ground you much better than having only elite physician, affluent friends.
That's very true. Yeah.
Oh my God, all this is like a wealth of pearls. It's great that all this is recorded. I mean, this is unbelievable.
So it's
You learn, and you learn from one another, and I think that's important. And it really is important. You know, even now during this COVID, we have Zoom cocktail parties from several of us all over the country. We had one Sunday, and just to talk about what's going on, and, you know, what's different, and how are we going to get back in sort of the swing of things when we ever have to go to work again. A variety of things. So the friends that you have, and I think that one of the things that I worry about a little bit is some of the women get so that their only life is their family. I don't think that's a great idea. I think you really need people a little bit outside of that to help you and to be supportive. And you really need the people who understand what you're going through as a doctor, but you also need people who understand the world around you.
Absolutely.
great observations. Palma, any last minute comments? We're almost to 6 o'clock, so.
No, I just wanted to thank Pat, Leslie, and Rania for an incredible discussion. I just agree with everything you've said. And we just need to support each other. At the end of the day, we are a team. We need to function like a team. And I think the best leaders know how to work with their team. And I think that's an important lesson. And you've shown us that. you've shown us how to do that, so thank you. I just have to thank you so much.
And it's important, as you said, to be able to create this structure around us so it can be successful, not only us, but also the people around us, and how we can empower the people working with it. So it's very important. Thank you.
You know, there was one question that I thought you were going to bring up that has been this stepping aside business, that giving someone your position if you're a senior man. And I think that's worthy of a little comment, because I think one of the things that everybody has to guard against is holding a job for too long and for holding too many jobs. And that really blocks the pathway for other people. And as you get more senior, I can't tell you how often I'm nominated or asked to do. A lot of times I just refuse, because that shouldn't go to somebody as senior as me. That should go to a younger person. And one of the best women we ever had on our faculty left our faculty for just that reason, because the man ahead of her would never give up on anything. And he probably had 7 different titles and jobs, none of which he did well, but he still kept those, and he was allowed to keep those instead of keeping 1 or 2. And I don't think you should be allowed to do that in academic institutions. I think there should be a limit to your number of titles, your number of roles. And in Canadian medical schools, they limit the number of years you can be chair. That has mixed bags, but again, having these people sit in a seat forever. I've been having a fight with the American College of Surgeons for years now about the 9-year term for regents. That is too long.
Great point.
Limits a third of the population from having that opportunity.
No, absolutely. That's a good point.
Yeah.
So encourage people to move up and out and to limit themselves.
We could push them out if you want.
And nominate people.
I don't know if I could say that to people in the higher up, excuse me, I need to get in there.
Yes. Well, I think it's true. And I think it's true. I mean, I think these are things that good deans and one of the jobs that I took on, I was medical director before Leslie, was one of the jobs that I took on was to find a new job for people who should go in their old job. And actually, it's pretty effective.
But this can be quite difficult though, because these people are like used to do whatever they do for a long time. So it's very difficult to find something new. So
well, no, you can always find something. It may be a title that's not a job, but you can frequently move about and up or out.
That's a good way to do it. Get them another job so they feel like they're progressing. Yeah.
Everybody needs to progress one way or another.
Yeah. And the other thing that you can do is you can get on the committees that make the rules, and you can change the rules so that, the rule may be that you only hold this position for so long, you have to be reelected, on and on. We actually got in the college, we got the secretary and the treasurer to go down from 9 years to 6 years. That was already an improvement. Now, if we can only get the regents to do that, and the governors went down from 9 years to 6 years, so that limiting the tenure in certain positions can be useful. And it doesn't mean to disrespect your seniors. It means to honor them in a different way.
Absolutely.
Mm-hmm. Well, this was a great show. Pat, you said you didn't have children, but I think that you have many children all over the nation.
And I tell you, I think they're a lot easier than biologic children.
You're absolutely correct on that one. Yes. Well, thank you. This was great, informative, funny, just so many emotions. But we appreciate your time and your energy and your thoughts on our questions. And we hope to see you again.
Thanks for inviting me.
Thank you. Thanks so much for having me. Yes, it's been wonderful. Bye.
Bye.
Bye. Thank you.